Awesome. That's probably the best way to engage here. One of my favorite rules in the mastermind that personally I love, and I got this from my good friend Jordan Freed, is what's most personal is most universal. What's most personal is most universal. Who wants to raise their hand and take a stab at what that means to them? What's most personal is most universal. Those two were already raised, so I think those just haven't lowered yet. So someone go and raise your hand. Okay, it looks like Stacy. Go on if you don't mind.
Hey there, I'll be on video shortly, but
Okay.
That's very profound because a lot of times I find that agents think that their experience is so unique and that they're these unique butterflies in the marketplace. So they try to reinvent themselves. Whereas if we look at the MREA, we've got the foundation is the models and then the creativity is on top. So what you just said to me says like, everything is everybody's feeling the same thing. We're going through the same stuff. So if it feels like deeply personal, like rejection, no, like we all experience that, or frustration and keeping people accountable. Yes, we all experience that.
Bingo, nailed it. And Stacy, thank you for starting us off with the engagement. I appreciate that. It's
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're exactly right. If it matters to you, I promise you, it matters to other people. That's really what that means, right? So I hope that encourages and inspires you guys to share, to come off mute, because again, I want this to be a great use of an hour for you guys. The topic here is level up as a CEO. Now, we can take that conversation a lot of different ways, right? There's a lot to that topic. We could talk about leadership, we could talk about recruiting, we could talk about vision. There's a lot that we can talk about there, and yet we have limited time. So we're going to talk about numbers, a lot of it. A lot of it's going to be numbers. So I want to ask you to raise your hand if you don't like numbers, if you love numbers. And yeah, there's 130 people here so far. I bet that 30% of you, a third of you, love numbers. The other third are okay, and the other third hate numbers, right? And I'll tell you one thing that personally I believe in business and being a CEO, specifically on something like knowing numbers, is some people, they kind of, I hate to say it this way, but you'll notice I can be kind of blunt. Some people hide behind a statement of, I'm just not good with numbers, right? As an excuse or a reason as to why they don't know them and just giving themselves a pass. Now, that may be true, right? Some people just aren't good with numbers. Some people, this is I'll leave that one alone. Being that there are 138 people here and I don't know all of you. And my thought on this, honestly, guys, if you're one of those people that just really struggle with numbers, acknowledge that, but that means you just got to work harder at it. It's just the reality of it, right? If I'm, quote unquote, big boned, and I want to be a certain weight, and so I see my friends that are that way naturally, or work out 3 times and all of a sudden have pecs, good for them. That isn't me. All right. I just have to work harder to get to the physique that I want. So same thing. So I trust that you guys are going to get value out of this. One thing that I wrote down, and I have a slideshow I'll show you guys, and I was limited in the number of slides I could use. So I have some other slides that I'll be speaking about, but I think this adds value to you guys. I want you guys to write down a formula. I'm a bit analytical, so I love formulas. The formula is your company equals your people times your culture times your focus. Your company equals your people times your culture times your focus. Now, this came from the book, A CEO Only Does 3 Things. Who's read that book? Go ahead and chat in the chat box if you have read it. A CEO Only Does 3 Things. Anyone? It's one of Gary's favorite books. In fact, one of my coaching clients just started coaching with Gary. And the very first book that Gary is using for his teachings is that book. So that book is that important to Gary too. It's a phenomenal book. So if you haven't read it, pick it up. But the way that the author explains that is, if you want to increase the value of your company, you need to increase the value of your people, increase the value of your culture, and increase your focus. That's really what it boils down to. Now, what we're going to talk about today is the focus piece, right? Let's say that we all know that we need perhaps more people, perhaps stronger people. At some point, people just becomes one of the biggest challenges in running a company. And culture, I trust that you guys are all committed to culture and having a culture that you're creating, not a culture that's just happening to you. But we're going to talk specifically about the focus piece and kind of where your focus should be. There's another quote I'm going to read you to kind of set the stage here. And it's from Brene Brown. I love Brene Brown. I think that she's phenomenal. She's a great author as well. And this is the quote. It's that problem identification is always a sound investment of time, money, and energy. Einstein said if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solutions. It feels very uncomfortable to spend time and resources trying to figure out exactly what the problem is because we want to jump to fixing the problem way too fast. Most of us are plagued with action bias, and we really struggle to stay in problem identification. I found that getting clear on what's wrong and why it's a problem is the best investment you can make at home or at work. So someone come off mute. What did you hear? What impact did that make on you?
But you got to get into action and don't overthink it. And as you go along, you'll adjust and tweak and whatever you got to do and the solution will finally come.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Who else? Problem identification. Come on, we got 150 people here. What's most personal is most universal. Stacy, I love you. Go ahead.
Hey, I kind of heard the opposite, and that was don't rush into, and I did zone out for the last half of it, but the first half to me said, don't spend so much time implementing solutions because you don't really have a full grasp of the problem yet. Yeah. And it just reminded me of my days as a legal assistant where every 6 minutes you had to bill for doing. And so there was such a doing bias. And yeah, you couldn't say thinking about the problem, like you weren't rewarded for that.
Right. Yeah. I charge you 3 hours to think.
Yeah, exactly.
Joseph, what you got?
Hey, so I used to work at Verizon, and one thing that we were taught when people would come in was how to troubleshoot by basically isolating what the real issue is. So what I heard was that whenever we're trying to find the solution, the first step should be that troubleshooting process of what is the real issue we're trying to solve. And until you have 100% clarity on identifying that problem, you shouldn't be trying to solve it.
Yeah. So go ahead and put in the chat box if you're guilty of that sometimes. Something pops up, a challenge pops up in your business, and you jump right into problem solving and not enough time in problem identification. Guilty as charged. Yes, that. Andrew, what you got? Thank you.
I got that a lot of times we can kind of assume the solution is more complicated because we're not really thinking about it. But if we spend more time thinking and analyzing what the actual problem is, the solution could be something very simple to implement.
Yep. Bingo. Good job. Good job. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I'll probably come on and off of screen share because when I'm in screen share, I don't see you guys as well. So I'm going to go to my presenter mode here. Can I still see you guys in the chat? Oh, I can still see the chat. Never mind. I think I should be okay. Okay. So I got the chat box open. I can still see it. Here's where we're going to start our time here. So the first stop is the agenda. And frankly, what I think leveling up as a CEO kind of really starts with. And I put together this call. I was thinking, what do I believe that people need either a reminder of or need to get refocused on this time of year heading into 2023 to really level up as a CEO? And one of the first ones, guys, that I'm just incredibly passionate about, it starts with the business plan, right? Like what the hell are we building towards? That's a huge piece of running a business. You know, the purpose of business is to fund a perfect life. Right? The purpose of business is to fund a perfect life. And I believe that most real estate agents in the country, they create business plans based on volume or based on units and not based on profit. And if you think about that, you know, you're going to work the entire year. And at the end of the year, look back and say, well, how much money did I make? I mean, who would sign up for that job? If there was a job that you could apply for and say, I want you to work your tail off for a year and go through all these challenges, at the end of the year, I'll let you know what you actually made. It's kind of crazy, right? So we should be building a plan based on profit. The last thing I'll say to kind of hammer that home, and then we'll blow past this one because it's pretty self-explanatory. Actually, we'll dive into those 2 bullet points. Is I'll talk to agents and I'll say, so what's your goal for 2023 or in a year? And they'll say, well, we're going to do 30 million. Awesome. So if you do $30 million this year, did you win? And they go, yes, absolutely. We totally won. Say, awesome. You sold $30 million this year and you netted 100 grand. Did you win? And they go, well, no. Okay. So just to prove that it's not about the volume, it's about the net. So, and part of building a business plan based on net, guys, it's actually a relatively it depends if you're an individual agent or if you are a rainmaker. If you're a rainmaker, it's much more challenging to actually do that because the math is harder. If you're an individual agent, it's typically simpler because you don't have cost of sales with a bunch of agents. So for this next rule here, this next part, I'm talking really specifically to people who have teams or are building teams, okay? And this is not just a teams-based call, for the record. This applies to everybody, but this point here is for teams. Is that what is a rainmaker production versus a team production? So for example, the unit economics are going to change entirely based on the rainmaker production when you're building a business plan based on profit. So for example, if I want to net $300,000 and I'm a team and I'm the rainmaker and I'm going to do 70 units, that math is probably going to be pretty easy to net 300 because I'm doing almost all the workload. I only probably need a couple of sales from team members to net that number if I'm selling 70 homes, right? Or let's say that I have a team and I'm only going to sell 12 homes, but I want to net 300. I may need to have 60 or 70 sales coming from my team in order to hit that. So you see how that's different? The one rule that, to be completely transparent with you guys, is a Jeremy Herrman original made up rule. So you haven't heard this before, and feel free to poke holes in it. That's fine. I call it the 70% rule. And pull out your pen, pull out your paper, because there's some math involved here. What the rule means is that if, let's say that I build a business plan and that I need to have 50 sales coming from my team members in order to hit that goal. Okay. 50 sales coming from team members. I'm going to come off the screen share here. And I have 2 agents on my team, and both of them say they want to sell 25 homes. Put in the chat box, what's the likelihood that I'll end up with 50 sales from my team members? I need 50 sales. I have 2 agents. They both say their goal is sell 25. What's the likelihood that I'm actually going to hit that? Little, 0, 70%, not likely. Trick question, small. Okay, so you guys are getting it, right? So here's what I say. Again, my own rule is whatever my team members say their goal is, and again, their goal should be based on profit too. And let's say that their number is 25 units. They want to sell 25 homes, which will equal 80 grand or whatever the math is. I'm going to coach them. I'm going to lead them. I'm going to guide them, encourage them, push them, all those things to hit 25. Okay. So I'm not saying anything to their face on this. It's just the business plan behind the scenes talking. If they say their goal is 25, I'm mentally counting on them hitting 70% of their goal. So I would take 25 and I would type in 0.7. I'm going to count on them selling 18 homes. Their goal is 25. I'm counting on 18. So another way, thank you, Kyle Harrison. I love that you love this. I love you. Another way to do the math on this is if I need 50 sales coming from my team, do the math the opposite way. 50 sales from team members divided by 0.7, that's 72. That means all the agents on my team collectively, their goals collectively need to add up to 72 sales for everyone to miss their goal by 30% and still hit the 50 the company needs. Does that make sense? Give a thumbs up or a yes if that made sense. In the chat box. Yes? Anybody have a... that's math, so I think we're good there. Okay, so I'm only counting on 70%. That's the main thing with business planning. I'll do it one more time. Thank you, Linda. I appreciate what's most personal is most universal. So I guarantee others were like, what? Okay. Their goal is to sell 30 homes using a different number. I'm counting on them doing 70% of it. So 30% of 30 is 9 units. So I'm banking on them only doing 21. So if I need to have 100 sales coming from my team in order for me to hit the profit goal for the business plan, I'm going to do 100 divided by 0.7. That's 143 sales. All of my agents collectively better add up to 143 sales for what their stated goals are, for everyone to miss it by 30% and for me to still hit 100. Cool. All right. Put in the chat box if you've heard of a rule like that before, or if you like that rule. Because that's completely made up. Just again to be transparent. I hope that makes sense as to why I'm really just building in insurance, right? Rachel, love it. Awesome. It's great. Perfect. Good. All right. Next. So then do you recruit more agents or make up the different? Okay, Ryan, that's a great question. Ryan, why don't you come off mute here? Ask that question.
Yeah. So sorry, I don't have my camera on because I'm getting ready to go to my Nana's Christmas party at her nursing home. But thinking through that, I'm like, okay, well, if I'm planning on everyone else to miss their mark, how do I make up for that? Because my answer has always been, I will just go hustle more houses. And as the rainmaker, I'm tired and I don't want to do that anymore. So do I just get more agents or what do I do?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Who sacrifices by you hustling more?
Everybody.
Such as?
Well, because the team loses opportunity. I spend more time working. And so
When you spend more time working, who are you not spending time with?
My family.
Are you willing to continue to sacrifice that time by you working harder to hit the goal?
Honestly, most of the time, yes.
Okay, that's fair. That's the question. That's the answer to the question there. If you're willing to sacrifice to you just work harder, that is an option. You just have to be okay with what you have to be aware of what you're sacrificing and be okay with it. As your coach, I love people who are willing to work hard because I refuse to motivate people. I'm not going to do it, right? You're either going to do it or you're not. And yeah, I would encourage you as a coach to go recruit more. To how do we win? How do you net the number that you want to net and still show up as the wife and mom and the time commitment that you want to be for your family? The answer is probably in recruiting. And yet one answer can be, I'm just going to do more. So it's up to you to kind of figure out which path you want to take. Does that help?
No, that's super helpful. And honestly, it just affirms what I was already thinking. So I'm good with that.
Awesome. Good job. Good job. I saw a hand raised and it was lowered. Anybody want to come back on, whoever that was?
Hey, Herman, Jason Walker here.
Jason, what's up, man? I haven't seen you in a long time.
I don't want to hijack because you may be going there. So are you going to talk about as far as scaling your team member count as well around this topic?
No, not on this call. Because again, we could take this in a million different directions. So make your point. What do you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, so basically how I've had to do it with our team and what I coach to is you need to insulate by 30%, figuring a 30-year team is gonna, peace out at any given time so that your goal doesn't become subjective to their departure. That's all.
That's a great point. You're counting on people leaving.
Yeah, because that's what the market centers do, right? So we should be doing it too as teams.
Yep. Another way to think about it too is, and Jason, I love that. So thank you for bringing that back up because that's not in the slides here. How long do you expect someone to be in your team for? Right? Like some people, we've had people on our team for 6 years and we're upset when they leave. It's like, you got 6 years out of that person.
Do you want my real answer or should we just let that lie?
Whatever you want to do.
Well, for all those coachable people on this wonderful call, really, we should be running our businesses as if we're a Chick-fil-A or a McDonald's, right? We're going to have turnover. It's part of it. Have your stuff documented and be okay with them leaving. We still run good businesses, but not everybody's going to be a match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's another way of building insurance and just creating a system that allows that wheel to turn.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thanks.
Jason, good hearing from you, man. I miss you. All right, moving on. The goal gap. So we have our economic model, okay? We know what the profit is going to be, and we've done the math, and we know what the unit measures are going to be. Another thing that I see people miss sometimes is they don't break their goals down into 2 different calendar years, which this gets weird, okay? So bear with me on this one because it does get a little bit weird. They don't break their goal down into 2 different calendar years, and they don't break it down into quarters and really get tactical with it. So here's what I mean. Go ahead and someone put in the chat box, what is your average contract to close period? Just type in whatever yours is. What's your average contract to close? 30 days, 30, 42, cool. Love it, good job. So let's just go with 30 days. Put in the chat box, I call it the ramp up period, which is how long does it take to go from you got the listing agreement signed to its day 1 on the market. So photo, staging, cleaning it, all that stuff. How long is the ramp up period for you? Put in the chat box there. 10 days, 1 week, 14 days. Cool, let's just use 10 days. Okay, the last one is days on market. For you right now, what's your average days on market? And again, I want you to be, you're creating a business plan with this, okay? So I love 3 days. I love, all that's awesome. I get it. And I know it's been true for a long time, but when we're creating a business plan, we want to build insurances for things not to always go perfect. So let's go ahead and say 14 days for right now, even though that's still a really low number. Okay. So we have a 30-day contract to close. We have a 10-day ramp up, and we have a 14 days on market. If you add up 30 plus 10 plus 14, what does that equal? How many is that? 30 plus 10 plus 14. Bingo. Good job, Sue. 54 days. So what we're going to do is we're going to go from December 31st, the end of the year, and we're going to count back 54 days. So I'm not asking people to pull up their calendars now, but let's just say that is somewhere around November 5th. Right? Is that math right? November 5th-ish. So let's say I'm right on that. You guys can spot check me on that if you like. November 5th is the last day to take a listing, to get a listing signed that has the ability to close that calendar year, right? Because again, it's got to go live, it's got to sit in the market, and then it's got to close. Any listing that we sell after November 5th, based on our numbers, is going to be a 2023 or 2024 closing. Put thumbs up or yes, makes sense in the chat box if you guys understand that. Again, math saves the day. Yes, perfect, awesome, good job. So that's 1 calendar year. So if it's November 5th, your calendar year for taking listings is November 5th, 2022 to November 4th, 2023. That is your calendar year for taking listings, November 5th to November 4th. So then if we break that down into quarters, again, it gets a little bit weird here, right? But the math is, the path is in the math. We have December 5th, January 5th, February 5th. So we have November 5th through December, January, through February 5th is quarter 1 for taking listings, right? November 5th through January 5th is quarter 1 for taking listings. Quarter 2 for taking listings is February 6th through March, April through May 6th. Make sense? So when you're doing your goal gap and you're doing your economic model, I have how many closings I'm going to do. So let's say I'm going to do 100 closings in a year. Okay. 100 closings in a year. And let's say that I'm going to do a 20, 30, 30, and 20% seasonality. So I'm counting on 20 closings in Q1, 30 closings in Q2, 30 closings in Q3, and 20 closings in Q4, right? I know this is a lot of numbers here, guys. Hang with me. 20 closings in quarter 1, and my activities quarter 1 is November 5th through February 5th. And let's just say, making up numbers, that I have to take 15 listings in quarter 1 to hit my goal. So if it's now, let's say December 22nd, today right now is December 22nd, I'm going to say, okay, I need to take 15 listings, and right now I've taken 4. So put in the chat box, if my goal is 15, I've taken 4. What's my gap for listings taken? 11, and everybody, I want to see 11 flying through here. I know I can lose people with numbers. Get active. 11, 11, 11. Okay, that's the gap, right? Now, with today being December 22nd, how many actual days do I have between today and February 5th? Between right now, December 22nd and February 5th, how many actual days is that? 45-ish. Is it 45? Is it 47? Someone give me the actual number. Today through February 5th. How many days do we have left? 45. Okay, let's say it's 45. Thank you for that, Harvey. Jeremy, awesome guest there. So my gap is 11. I have 45 days left. So I'm going to do my goal divided by my gap. Someone type in their calculator 11 divided by 45. What does that equal? 11 divided by 45. It's going to be a decimal.
0.24.
0.24. Perfect. What does that represent? Whoever said that? I'll help you out. That's the number of listings you have to sign every single day. If I sign 0.24 listings every single day for the next 45 days, I'll make up my 11 gap, right? I know it's decimal. I know it's weird. The next thing I do is I take that 0.24 and I times 7 for the next week. Someone type in 0.24 times 7. What's that number? 0.24 times 7 equals what? 1.71. Okay, 1.68, somewhere around there. Okay. So when I'm running my team meeting, guys, this week we need to take 1.71 listings, and I'm always rounding up. This week we need to take 2 listings to stay on track to hit our goal. 2 listings to stay on track to hit our goal. We're gonna do this one more time quick. Okay. The goal is 20 closings in Q1. And let's say right now I have 10 for Q1 already pending. So what's my gap? Goal's 20. I got 10. What's my gap? Type it in there, guys. 10. Perfect. Okay. Now, I said my average contract to close was 30 days. So somebody go from March 31st backwards 30 days. What date is that? March 31st, go backwards 30 days. What date is that? February 26th, something like that? Yeah, March 1st. That would make sense. Thank you. March 1st. Thank you. Okay. How many days do we have between right now and March 1st? We have 31 in January, 28 in February, plus 9 left this year. What's that equal? How many days do we have left? 68 days. Okay. Now, gap divided by days. 10 divided by 68. What do we got to do each day? 10 divided by 68. What's the number? 0.14. That number times 7, what is it? And again, 7 days for 7 days in a week. 1.029. Cool. So if I'm running my team meeting, guys, this week we need to sell 1, and I'd probably still round that up. We need to sell 2 and list 2 this week to stay on track to hit our goal. Now, I know that was a lot of math. Okay. There's software, there's systems out there that do this for you, that make it easy for you. I know there's a lot of math. So let's come off. I'm going to come off the screen share. Somebody raise your hand or just come off mute. I don't really care at this point. What did you take out of that? I know that some of you probably have a gun in your head, and I apologize for that. Put it down. It's math. Come off mute. What did you guys take out of this?
There was someone on another holiday call that mentioned that our database could be compared to months of inventory. And that's exactly kind of what you're working here. So if you're looking at the MLS and you're thinking about your months of inventory and what kind of market you're in, you need to understand the math on how long it's going to take for you to produce.
Bingo. I love that. Who else?
You need to understand the math, but after that, the success is just an equation. Go do the activities to hit your numbers.
Good job, Jeremy. Yep. Numbers tell the story. If you measure it, you can manage. That's it, guys. What's the goal? Then breaking it down into a quarter. Where am I at? What's the gap? How many days have we got left? Go execute. Work with the end in mind. I love it. Good job, guys. Good job. I know that was a little bit of a dense topic, but can you guys go ahead and put in the chat box, put yes, if you can see the importance of running your team that way. Yes, yes. How more likely are you to hit your goal if you run your team that way? Yes, yes. Okay, good. Good job, guys. Okay, moving on. Oh, the last part here that I like to say is because we had 65 days left and 45 days left, I may get more general, right? With we got to sell too. But when it starts to come down and we got, 2 weeks left, we got 17 days to go and we need 2, then I'm getting tactical, meaning we need to sell 2 homes. We got 17 days to go. Who's got what? Who's selling what? Who are we talking about? What's their name? When did you show them their last home? I'm getting tactical when I get near the end of my gap or near the end of my quarter. Okay, moving on. Conversion reports, right? Guys, tracking lead generation and conversions have never been more important. It's just really, really, really important right now that we track our conversions. Use software, use spreadsheets, use whatever you guys got to do. But this is a time right now where we need to know where the areas of opportunity are. One of my good friends, Craig Zuber, we went on a rant the other day. It was in a podcast. You guys should listen to it. The podcast is called "Are You Winning?" and it's actually me interviewing Craig. And the episode's called "Do or Die Lessons to Win in This Market." I think it's what it's called. Do or Die Lessons to survive in this real estate market. It's an hour of me interviewing him. And one of the things that he says, he talks about how people always say, I need more training, I need more training, I need more training. He's like, until you do 1,000 door knocks, I don't know what the hell to train you on. Where in the conversion process do you need help? Is it in the employment setting? Is it in the hold rate? Is it in the closing rate? Where do we need the help? If we don't have the conversion numbers, I literally don't know how to help you. Right? So I see a bunch of amen. Dustin, good seeing you, buddy. Okay. And I'm going to give you guys one thing here. It's called the Items of Value Scoreboard. I think this is a really important tool that can be used in your team. Eris, if you don't mind, put in the chat box the Items of Value ledger. So my cyberbacker is going to put this in here right now in just a minute. And the way this works is you're going to put a calendar up on your wall. So it's a physical visual calendar, and it's a 1 through 31, right? And on one side you have the ledger. So again, Eris, type that in there for me if you don't mind. I know it's coming any second. And then each person of your team has their own colored marker. So the numbers are simple, and he'll type us in here right now. There you go. Thank you, Eris. So a number 1 is a listing appointment set. Number 2, listing appointment held. 3, listing signed. 4, I sold a listing. 5, I set a buyer appointment. 6, I had a consult. 7, I got a buyer agreement signed. 8, I sold a buyer. And 9 is a price correction. Those are the only items of value. Meaning we're not giving value for effort. We're not giving value for activity. We're not giving value for homes shown. That's it. It's those 9. So what you do is you go to your whiteboard, and if I'm an agent and today I set a listing appointment and got a buyer consult signed, I'm going to go to my whiteboard on my color and I'm going to put a 1,7. 1,7 on the whiteboard of my color. When you do this and you look back at your whiteboard, you see whose color is showing up. You see whose color is not showing up. Your team sees the same thing. It's a phenomenal way of kind of politely using peer pressure and tracking your numbers in a very visual process. Dustin, a successful sales business is a combination of dailies, 1s and 0s. Yep, absolutely. And then, guys, if you Google the Keith Cunningham growth funnel, I'm not going to go over here for Harris. You're the man. Click on that. That's the Keith Cunningham growth funnel. You guys can read it at your own for the sake of time here. No, we got time. I only got a few slides left. Here, I'm gonna dive into it here. Click on that link, and you guys, I'll read through it here. This is the funnel that Keith Cunningham created. Keith Cunningham is an awesome author. He wrote the book The Road Less Stupid and a bunch of other books. He's a great author. And the funnel, the top of the funnel is keeping more customers, right? Next, increase referrals and repeats. That book rules. It does roll, John. Next, define and enhance our certainty for success. Enhance and train our sales process. Increase conversion percentage. Increase transaction size. Increase the frequency of transactions. And lastly, increase leads. The challenge that I see as a coach is most agents, they say, we need more leads, we need more leads, we need more leads. That's the last thing in the funnel that you actually need. First, keep more customers, define success, get more repeats, increase your conversion rates. Leads is typically not what we actually need more of. We just got to get better. Make sense? I know it's a blunt statement. Go ahead and put makes sense, yes, whatever you want to put in the chat box if you follow along here. I'm losing you guys. Sue and Frank are still here. Good job, guys. Thank you. All right. Number 6 here. I think mic drop. I think this is important too. And I won't spend a ton of time on this, but what are your units, volume, GCI, and gross profit per lead source? The key word here, guys, is gross profit. As a coach, I have heard so many stories of people saying, you know, well, Gary says I should get a 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1 return on my investment. We spent $30,000 on Zillow and, you know, I made 90, 3-to-1. Now that's a good investment. And I'll say, okay, great. Is that GCI or gross profit? I'm like, well, what do you mean? Is that after you paid splits? Did you make $90,000 after splits? Or was that the top line revenue before splits? Oh no, that's top line revenue. Well, what's your split? 50-50. Okay, so you spent $30,000, but you actually only grossed 45. That's a different conversation of business investment making sense, right? So when you guys are tracking, I see this a ton, guys. You guys are professional real estate agents, and I'm going to say that you guys are the best in the industry. Let's just agree on that. Oftentimes, professional real estate agents aren't also professional spreadsheet makers. Right? So your spreadsheet says unit, volume, GCI, and that's it. And we're not taking it to the gross profit and the lead source to have the data, to have the metrics, to really dive in on this point. So really putting this slide up is really just helping you guys challenge, do I need to look at how I'm tracking my business differently so I have better data? That's really the point here. Thoughts, comments on this part? Now it's been a minute since I've had anyone up on stage here. We only have only a handful of slides left here. Only really 2 more points. I think it's only 2 more points left. Who wants to come up here? Looks like Greg. Greg, what you got, buddy?
Hey, Jeremy. So I'm curious what your thoughts are like with profit first, if you've read that or implemented that in relation to the 70% rule and just trying to stay profitable from the start.
I love profit first. Funny, I'm actually about to talk about Michael Michalowicz in a minute too, the author of that book. But actually with his next book, Fix This Next, I think about profit first more so in regards to creating my business plan based on net profit and making sure that as I bucket out my money, that my net profit number is actually enough. Right? If I have, you know, X percentage going to taxes, X percentage going to debt, X percentage going to whatever, and then I have my OpEx account that's got to run my business. And at the end of the day, I also have my family, my household, my living expenses. Oftentimes what I see is that they want a net 200, but it actually still isn't enough money from the way they live the way they want to live. And I made up the number 200. So I love that book. I think about it really on the first metric of what the profit is. It's a great question.
Well, thanks, Jeremy.
Of course. Who else? Who else has had an aha in the last handful of minutes they want to come up and share? Good. Keep going. Okay. All right. Next slide here. We got 19 minutes. Okay. This is another one I'm really passionate about. I actually believe this is and Greg, this goes perfectly into the conversation that you just asked, actually. I believe the most important metric right now to track is your projected net profit, right? Your activities are important. Number of listings you're taking are important. Your conversion rates are important. All that, your goal gap is very important. All that's great, but knowing your future income in 60 days, like down to the penny, and making sure is that enough to A, cover the business, and B, cover my lifestyle, that's the most important number to me right now. Every single coaching call, I look at their goal gap and I look at their projected net profit report. Those two things every call. I got to make sure you guys are making money. Thoughts, comments on that? Throw in the chat box if you have something to add to that.
Jeremy, does your thinking change, excuse me, for solo agents who are early on in their career?
In regards to this topic?
In regards to net profit, I mean, one could argue that you've got to be investing in yourself, investing in your business to grow, and therefore maybe be willing to take a hit, and not be at net profit numbers or desired net profit earlier on in your career.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool point. I'm glad you asked that question. The thought has to go back to you, right? As the business owner, when you created your net profit goal, and there's a level of expenses that you're willing to invest in your business, that really is a trade-off or a sacrifice. I have some agents that I know where they net a lot of money and they spend almost nothing on their business, and that's okay. And I have other clients that are investing more in their business right now, and they're sacrificing their profit to actually make less for growth. It's all a personal choice in regards to that. And one thing that's interesting about real estate in regards to business in general, in my opinion, is we're lucky and spoiled at the same time, in the fact that I would say 99% of real estate agents, they get started by lead generating and selling one house, and then they make some money, and then they maybe invest a little bit, they do it again, they do it again, they do it again. Any store that you drive by in your car, there was a capital investment that they had to go out and make and go in debt before they ever sold a burrito. And we don't have to do that in this business more times than not, but I actually think sometimes it limits our thinking. So what's that?
Amen.
Who said that? Tell me more.
This is Dustin out of Atlanta.
Hi, Dustin, out of Atlanta. Tell me more.
Yeah, I moved out of productivity in 2022. And so, it's really when it became very visible. I think one of the big issues we have nationally as agents is that the profit is so high when you first get in, that the transition to growing a business, you realize that, the investment has to go back into the business. And when you're running on 25, 30% profit margins, which can be healthy when you're at scale, it's hard to adjust to that when you are used to a 90% profit margin.
Right.
Yeah. So absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's a great point. So the answer to that first question, do I think about it differently? It really is an internal question for you. It's a what are you willing to sacrifice question. Does that help?
Yep.
What did you take out of that answer? If you don't mind, like what did you hear based on that?
I heard that it's a personal choice. You can decide that you do want to invest in your business, that you could take less at the, I would say at the outset, so long as you're putting that money to good use, and reinvesting in the growth of the business, not necessarily on frivolous. I mean, frankly, it could be frivolous things if that's what you choose for it to be, and if that's okay for you in your life and in your business.
Yeah, I love that's a great summary. That's the cool thing about this industry is you can make as much or as little as you want. There's really no right or wrong. I mean, some agents, they want to be in production forever because they love it. And some agents want to get the hell out, and that's okay too. It's whatever you want to, whatever business you want to build. It's just a great industry to do that. Okay. Moving on. This comes up, Michael Michalowicz. So to me, the question really becomes, as the CEO, where should your focus be any given day? And this is, to me, this aspect here that we're about to go over is really a mindset and a philosophical way of running a business. And it has to do with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So the way that, if you guys are familiar, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs: physiological, safety, love, belonging, esteem, etc. And the way this works is each bucket has to be completely filled before you can go into the next, right? So let's say that John Kerry and I right now, we're out at lunch and we're eating burgers. And I'm hanging out in esteem. You know, I'm confident, we're having a great time. John and I are having a lot of fun. It's good food. But all of a sudden I start choking, right? My body instantaneously, without me having to make the decision, my body instantly drops down to physiological to focus on breathing, right? I can't be confident and choke. So it just happens to me instantly, right? And go ahead and put make sense or yes if you follow what I'm saying here. The challenge is oftentimes I see people where their business is choking and yet they're still hanging out in esteem. Right. So this actually is developed by Michael Michalowicz, the author of Profit First. And he wrote the book where this comes from called Fix This Next. Okay. And it's really, where should your focus be? So the base, the physiological part of the hierarchy of needs is sales, the creation of cash. Then it's profit, which is stability. Now in our business, not every business is the same, but most times when the sales bucket's full, this bucket's also full. Right? Next is order, which is the creation of efficiency. So to me, that means system development, recruiting, all the stuff, the working on the business part, right? That's all order. Then you have impact and legacy, which is what you give and the legacy that you're leaving behind, right? I'll just tell you that I think very few, and this is maybe a blunt statement, and it's okay if it is. I think very few agents ever get to impact and legacy in their business because they never really build a business big enough that truly scales to that. Doesn't mean you don't have a database plan where you do some stuff. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying building a business that allows the business to actually start to focus on impact and legacy. Most of us hover, we bounce back up and down around sales, profit, and order. So the example that I give here is, there's a lot of agents that like to hide in order, right? They're going to work on all these systems. I need to develop this. I need to develop that. But yet they have one pending or no pending. That's equivalent to you choking, but you haven't changed your strat. You haven't changed your focus yet. So to me, every single coaching call that I jump on, when I look at the goal gap, are we on track to hit our goal? And I look at the projected net profit, those two things combined, my future cash flow and my goal gap, those two things combined tell me as a coach if I can allow the call to hang out anywhere up here. Meaning if you're not on goal and you're losing $15,000 in 2 months or next month, and you show up wanting to talk about some system, there's nothing to talk about. It's the wrong topic. We got to get back down to sales and profit. Put in the chat box that thoughts, comments, or even better, come off mute. I think it's a really important. I think this is really important. So someone come off mute and share here. What did you hear? What did you take out of that? Evan, how about you, if you don't mind? Evan Mudgett.
Yeah, sure. I like how the analogy of hiding. It might feel more comfortable. A lot of times we spend a lot of time we know in our mind what we need to do. Mm-hmm. And it feels a lot more comfortable and easy. Oh, I just need to bury myself in training's great. Obviously, this is great. But if I don't have anything on my board, what does next month look like? I need to get out there and start networking and making calls. And it's but it's very easy to avoid. I think we're all guilty of that from time to time.
Thank you for the vulnerability. I appreciate that. And what's funny too, you brought up even this is great. This is probably a distraction for a lot of you. I trust you're getting value out of it, but a lot of times there's so much content, there's so much education, there's so many things for us all to go to that we're asked to go to. Most of us should probably say no to those things and get back to sales. If your business gives you permission to show up on that stuff, show up on it. And yet not always is that the right thing for you to do. Jeremy, Mr. Weiss, what you got?
So my question, Jeremy, is it seems to be getting to the giving portion there on the pyramid. It seems there has to be a mindset shift in there as well, where you're shifting from a growing and keeping everything to a growing and giving mindset. How do you make that mental shift?
That's a great point. When you say that, what I first went to is the book, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. If you haven't read that book also kicks ass. Morgan Housel, The Psychology of Money. Gary's a big fan of that book too. In fact, there is, if you guys like podcasts, go to the Tim Ferriss podcast. If you guys don't know who he is, it's Ferriss, Tim Ferriss. He did like a 3-hour interview with Morgan Housel probably a year ago. So if you search Tim Ferriss, Morgan Housel, you'll find the episode number. Part of his book, The Psychology of Money, is knowing what your enough money is. You know, when are you satisfied? When do you have enough? And when can you mentally switch over to, cool, I'm netting $500,000 a year. Our net worth is fill in the blank. I've used that cash to funnel into buying investment properties. My passive income is now this. My 529s are set up. My 401ks are set up. Like, my family is good now. Let's move to a transformation and an impact stage of your business. I think you got to get clarity on that, on when you make that move. There's also another interview from Tim Ferriss. I forgot the guy's name, but it's basically an interview with someone who makes like $15,000 a year and is incredibly happy. So it's such a personal thing, right? It's gotta be internal. It probably doesn't help, but you know, the reality is that so much of this stuff is internal. As far as the slide deck here, my next deck is Q&A and ahas. But there's one last thing I want to leave you with, which is a text message. If you guys know who Abraham Shreve is, he's a maps guy and a KW guy. He made a Facebook post maybe 2 or 3 months ago that I screenshotted and I've used a bunch. And it's a text message that he found from Gary Keller. So again, this is a text from Gary to Abe, okay? And I'm going to read it. It says, here's what I've learned. Set goals, create plans, hire people, and hold people accountable to work those plans and hit the goals. Inspect what you expect. And when people start missing goals, do not turn a blind eye. Jump in and either help them grow or go. We don't worry, no stress, no drama. We simply execute the approach. And I thought that was a great way to kind of wrap up and summarize all of this. So now the next 5-6 minutes are you. So come off mute, share your ahas, rapid, questions or thoughts, comments. Lenny, why don't you come off mute if you can and say what you typed.
So I typed that I believe that what I took away from it was the importance of going with the flow of your strategy, since you've presented the hierarchy or the flow of what's really important or what's the steps that you should be doing. And rather than skipping some of it, you should really go for it. And because in that sense, it will, when you skip those steps, it will diminish the substantial value that you will supposedly produce in the future. So that's what I took from it.
Good job. Hey, Eris, can you find that text and put it in the chat? Mr. Kimberly, what you got, sir?
I think my big takeaway is that, back to the Maslow's thing or whatever, the hierarchy of needs, it's just like, I put it in the chat. It's like, don't be concerned on how long it's going to take. I know we've been coaching for 1.5 years now, and you still haven't let me out of the second. Yeah, it's just like every time I try to get above it, it's like, no, we're not going there yet. And I think that it's been a long journey, but the reality is don't be afraid to stay in that zone as long as it takes, because it's worth it. It seems like it takes time to master something. So don't be afraid of it.
Thank you for that. I love coaching you, man. I love being your partner. By the way, if you don't have a coach, get a coach. Just
amen.
Make that point. Sign up today. Another thing from Zuber, he talks about how amateurs, they squirrel to other stuff all the time. True pros, they stick on something for a long period of time. There's a coach that he's not a coach, he's a speaker that I've known for a long time. And I saw him on Instagram or something the other day doing another presentation speech to an audience on lead generation, talking about like closing for an appointment to the audience, right? And half of my brain went to, I couldn't imagine doing that same presentation for 35 years, right? But then the other side is, that dude's a pro. And that's why there's 2,000 people in the audience. So sticking on something for a long period of time is a superpower. Rachel, what you got? Love your background.
Thank you. So I'm not an agent. I'm on the operations end of things. So I kind of come from it with a different perspective. But what I am seeing and what I really took away is this business hierarchy of needs. It really stood out to me because at the end of the day, like, I'm very much in the world of creation of efficiency systems. Like I live in that world. Yeah. And I think agents can really get stuck in that world too, because we want to build this, we want to build that. But when I'm looking at this chart, it just reminds me that like, until you have the sales, the profit, like that portion, like completely in check, you don't give yourself permission to be building more systems, to be scaling more with those systems, because that foundation is what's going to get you to that next level. And it really reminds me of the same idea in the MREA where, you can't do the creativity until you have the foundation, and it's the backwards triangle. And so I think this triangle laid it out for me, and seeing that, the foundation, once you get that component completely set, then you can give yourself permission to get to the next. And then hopefully it gets you to that impact and legacy one day.
I love it. What a great hire you are. Congrats to your rainmaker. That's awesome. Hey, you can stick in systems because that's your job. But when your rainmaker, sneaks and starts looking at your computer and the pendings are out there, you kick them in the butt and say, go make some sales. Elizabeth, what were you going to say? I thought you had your hand raised.
Hey, I was just going to say, I was on Zuber's call yesterday for converting, and that what you said about pros actually works on the conversion side and for running a business. Pros are clear, amateurs confuse you.
Bingo. Yep. Anyone else? We got time for one more. Was this helpful, guys? Again, level up as a CEO. We could take this a million different directions. There's a lot we could do here, but just to give a real quick recap here, number one, business plan based on profit. 2, goal gap. That's the most dense part of this, right? But know your numbers, get tactical with it, and execute. 3, conversion reports. How do I know what to train on if I don't know what the metrics are? 4, gross profit by lead source. That's really a strategy for making sure that your tracking system is showing you gross profit. Projected net profit, to me, the most important metric. What's your future cash flow look like? And then the business hierarchy of needs. Elizabeth, thank you. Jeremy, thank you. I appreciate you guys. It's a privilege having you guys in our community. It's a privilege being a coach. Thank you, and go kick some butt. Happy holidays.